let's imagine we're talking to a CMO right now, and they're in a position where they need to decide budget, right? And I'm seeing my traffic going down. I'm seeing my conversions going up. So part of me could say, well, if I don't need all that traffic, why should I continue investing more? So that's my first question. Should you be investing the same or continue on investing? Is it time right now to say, hey, I can cut some budgets because I can do it less? But at the same time, what about the focus on AI? At some point, we're going to come to a position where the observing isn't feasible anymore because we need to move. And that's sometimes it's also internal pressure. It doesn't mean the market says it. But let's talk about those things. What about budget shifts, or are those needed? And what about how do I make room in my budget for the new LLMs and AI's options that are out there?
Yeah, great question. I would not recommend cutting budgets right now, but I certainly would look at how we're measuring our investments. What is the return that we're getting from those? And are we measuring the right things? To your mention, these to your comment, your call out there, these vanity metrics that we've used. Like it's weird to say this, but traffic in many cases is a vanity metric. Especially if that traffic is going to a low converting blog post or informational, it's driving visits to informational content that weren't converting before, at least not into revenue, but we just didn't need to measure it because we got maybe a little lackadaisical about how we were measuring the impact that we were having and the return on those investments. And so would I recommend cutting budgets right now? No, because we don't really know where the dust is going to settle. It hasn't even started yet. Imagine remodeling a kitchen while we're living in the home. And yeah, we've got some visqueen covering across that part of the house, but we're still hearing the sawing and the hammering and the nailing, and we can't see anything going on in there. We just know that something crazy is happening. So I would not recommend cutting budgets right now, but I would recommend looking at doing a deep dive into how we're measuring things. Are we relying too heavily on those top level metrics like traffic? Can we be measuring more effectively down to revenue? That's a key aspect of it. And looking at, and another aspect of this is that's important too, is looking at the strategy that we have around SEO, the tactics that we're employing. Are they aligned with where we know visibility is coming from AI models? And this is one of these key aspects of the paradigm shift that you mentioned in the beginning, Sean, where we're seeing some changes. The fundamentals of SEO, AEO, GEO still are relatively untouched to a large degree, at least. But we have how we're measuring our impact that's shifting. And another thing, I think probably the biggest thing that I've noticed is shifting is content. And we've always talked about content being king, queen, supreme chancellor, whatever we want to call it. And that certainly is true today. Very likely, much more so, especially from the perspective of prior to this, even though Google's gotten and other search engines and models have gotten smarter about how we're looking at content, and we're way beyond keyword stuffing, and we're way beyond TF-IDF, and we're talking about vector embeddings. Vector embeddings haven't gotten nearly the credit that and the visibility and awareness that they really should have, but we're shifting so quickly we almost don't have time to focus on vector embeddings because we know that AI models are looking for this concept of chunked content that they can pull into a prompt response that is a complete topical sort of train of thought or concept from a particular page. And so we can't think about ranking our page anymore. We almost need to think about visibility around every sentence, every paragraph on our page, because that is very likely the only thing that would get pulled into that prompt response. So how do we make those sentences and paragraphs, how do we make them worthy of a citation in a prompt response? And now we're talking about a very different strategy around content. That's one of the biggest shifts that we've seen, and one of the areas that we've focused the most on over the past actually years, and really now kind of the market, I think, is sort of catching up to where we've been working around content. We've called them a number of things over time, but citable elements is the one that we've referred to the most. So what is this, this element on a page that is unique enough to justify a publisher giving you a link to include it, sort of thing? Why would this unaffiliated third-party site a link to your content, especially link to your sales page or something that's lower in the funnel sort of thing, how are you going to convince them to do that? And usually that's because you're offering something of value on that page. First-party data, some sort of deep dive analysis that you've done through your customer service logs or something that's truly unique about your offering that no other website, no other publisher is talking about. How do we get that on the page? And that's the stuff that's getting absorbed into prompt responses. So the market has kind of been catching up with a lot of deep work that we've done around the customer journey, what's meaningful, the purchase decision committee that is represented by that ICP. We put this label on it in this, we assume it's this one person that is making a decision, but they represent a whole group of people, especially for complex transactions behind the scenes. How do we get the content on the page that they need to see, even when they may not know what they need to see? How do we get it on there? So beyond frequently asked questions, what about the frequently unasked questions and what we call friction-inducing latent unasked questions, those gems, those elements that an individual representing whoever is behind the scenes for that transaction needs to know that they don't know. All they know is they're not quite seeing what they need to see on that page to commit, to convert. How do we get that information surfaced on that page in a unique and compelling way that an AI model would be interested in enough to give us a citation and include that in their prompt response? That's the stuff that we really need to be thinking about in terms of content.